Hi everyone, welcome to another Voices of Tower Hamlets. This is Councillor Piramir. So, Voice of Tower Hamlets is I interview interesting individuals, campaigners, etc., about issues that affect Tower Hamlets or issues that residents of Tower Hamlets are really passionate about. So today I've got Angela, who's the chair of UTAG, that's a United, the licensed taxi drivers trade group. And the reason why I've got Angela is they took TfL and won. It took them to court and won over TfL's livable street scheme or low traffic neighborhood, which was I think a street space or street safe or something like that. So in Tower Hamlets, it's called Livable Streets. I know a lot of people have been passionate about it. I know I wrote about it recently about the over 2,000 people put a petition in saying that they are people of protective characteristics. That's people with age or on the basis of people who are elderly or have disability or other uh, uh, characteristics that are protected by law. They've been discriminated against by Tower Hamlets Council, especially the way they've done the consultation, where they implemented the scheme. So on the day when the petition was being presented, the court result comes. The High Court does this judgment where basically TfL's scheme got knocked out in the court by UTAG. So that's why I got Angela on to basically find out more and see if there's any similarities between the issues that we have in Tower Hamlets and the issues that they brought to fore with Transport for London, especially around the Bishopsgate area, Liverpool Street, which is just around the corner from us, just across the road from Tower Hamlets, actually. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Angela. So, Angela, tell us about yourself. You're not exactly the typical picture of normally have in mind or in media. So, tell us about yourself and why a licensed taxi driver? Why a black cab driver, Angela?
Hello, Puri. Thank you for the opportunity to come onto your show. My granddad was a London taxi driver from the 1920s, and I used to be in the London ambulance service, and my roommate was a guy, and he decided to do the knowledge. I didn't know what it was at the time because my granddad died before I could speak with him about it. He explained, and I said, I quite fancy doing that because it's freedom and you get out of it what you put into it. So we did the knowledge together, and it took me 3 years, and that was, I got my badge 32 years ago. So in 1987, and I've been doing it ever since. And now my two sons are cab drivers as well. So it does seem to be in the family blood. That's basically what into it.
That's amazing. You in 2018 you formed you're the chair of an organization called UTAG. Why did the black cab drivers feel that they had to form an organization in 2018 to what made you form this organization? Were you under threat, or etc.? What was happening in 2018 and onwards in terms of how, so like the services that you provide?
Yeah, if I'll give you just a bit of background on that. I'm actually director of United Trade Action Group. There's myself and my colleague Trevor Merrills, and as you know, Karen, she's a senior member of it. And I'm also the Deputy General Secretary for Cab Drivers Representation Group, the United Cabbies Group. And we decided that when Transport for London stopped. They refused to give Uber any back in 2016, and naturally Uber appealed, and Transport for London more or less adopted Stockholm syndrome and didn't do what they should. They did not fight the appeal. Now, if I just go say that this is nothing to do with what we feel about private hire drivers. Honestly, it's nothing to do with that. But Uber as an entity were riding roughshod over all the regulations. And you've got other big PH companies, Addison Lee for one. They adhere to the regulations. You know, they are a sort of competition with the small C to the black cab trade. But we've rubbed along nicely since, crikey, about 1962 when minicabs, they were called in those days, first came to fruition. We've never had any huge problems with them. Uber.
Can you talk about the regulations? I know you're seen as a public transport by the regulator. What kind of regulations do you have to abide by in terms of? It's not just like dropping a mate off to a place. What do the regulators expect yourself as a black cab driver to do? Like what is it different for? What is it that you have to do which is different from, say, someone giving a lift to a neighbor and dropping them off to the market, for example? Just to explain, because a lot of our listeners don't understand the kind of regulations that you're under.
That distinguishes us in London from private hire is that we have the unique right to apply for hire. So we can cruise the streets with our yellow light on. We don't need to be booked. If you saw a cab, you just put your hand up, I'd stop, and we go to wherever you wanted to go. To get that right, and it's a very hard-earned right, that we have to undertake the knowledge, which is an arduous task. It's not just learning a few streets and then you're okay. It's a succession of, it can be up to between 12 and 15 oral examinations. And you're marked on each one. And if you do well, get on to the next stage a bit more quickly. If you do badly, you can be held back. And we in London, we are the only, us and buses, are the only forms of public transport that are allowed to apply for hire. That is the unique difference between us and the private hire industry. And also, our vehicles are highly regulated, controlled. They must adhere to very stringent conditions of fitness laid down by TfL. We can, if we want to buy a new vehicle now, we only have a choice of two. That's the TXE, the big electric cab, which comes in at around about 70,000, or the Nissan Dynamo, which comes in at about 50,000. We can no longer buy even Euro 6 diesel cabs. So private hire are allowed to buy a range of cars. If it's electric, if it's hybrid, they can have a Prius, a Nissan. So our conditions of fitness and the vehicles that we are prescribed to buy are very narrow. So that's just a couple of things that how we are tightly regulated, and it's very hard to obtain a green badge. It's open to anyone whatsoever, no matter what race, colour, creed. It does not matter. Open to everyone. It's just getting to the final hurdle. And if you can do it, if you can stick to it, you get that badge. And it's hard to earn, but it's so easy to have it taken away from you if you're not what Transport for London call a fit and proper person, and if you don't behave like a fit and proper person.
There's a lot of onus on you in terms of disabled passengers as well. I know that your vehicles have to allow wheelchair, etc. And I remember watching a program on the Knowledge. They were asking, like, you have a wheelchair passenger, where if they want to get to this club, etc., where would you drop them off? And the correct answer is you need to know where the disabled entrance is, or etc. at that time, kind of ish, or how, so an area where a wheelchair user could basically be easily access. So so there's a lot of emphasis on of catering for disabled users. And is it correct to say a lot of your passengers are actually regular passengers are actually disabled users? Is that correct as well, Angela?
Yeah, we carry a lot of disabled passengers. You may be aware of the boroughs and the local council's taxi card scheme, that they sort of fund taxi rides for disabled people with protected characteristics. They will pay up to a certain amount of their fare, and they use black taxis to do it, because our entire fleet, whether they're Euro 6s or electric, must be fully wheelchair accessible. And they have to rank, that an extra step to help people with mobility problems get in and get out of the cab. They have a visual aid, they have yellow seat markings and yellow grab handles, hearing loops. So it makes it that much easier for disabled people to travel, and all taxis must that standard. And sorry.
No, and moving on to like fit and proper. I know a lot of taxi drivers are very opinionated. Is it so, like, there's an impression taxi drivers are very opinionated and very loud and have very strong politics, let's say. Is that true, or is that just a stereotype that people have because because of media or etc.? What's your experience of people who drive? Are they from all walks of life, basically?
They are from every walk of life, really, and many, many different countries are welcome in our trade. And it's like any section of society. Some are opinionated, some are quiet, some are very political, and some issue politics. They don't get involved. But I think that this stereotype that, oh, the taxi trade is a white, football loving, hang 'em and flog 'em, I won't go out of the river brigade, that has long gone, and may it never be. We are a very, very broad, and that's how it should be. And I'm proud to be part of that.
No, definitely. But I just want to like 70 grand, 50 grand is a lot of money. So you have to work a lot of hours to pay that off. So there's another misconception, is that a lot of black cab drivers have villas in Spain, kind of ish, like you're all kind of like very privileged, etc. Or like, but from my experience, so I've got a friend who's a black cab driver, and also where I come from, the Hackney carriages, they you have to work really long hours to make ends meet. Is is that still now as well? Because 50 grand, 70 grand to pay off a car is quite a lot of money, and you've got to put in the hours. Is that true, or am I just, or is the stereotype of the villas and the holidays, working 3 hours a day or working 3 months a year? Is that true?
I'm sure taxi drivers, private hire, bus drivers, train drivers, they may have villas in Spain, but it's all done by hard work. We don't just go out there and people throw money at us. What you put into it, you can get out of it. And I wouldn't decry anyone for working hard and, for their benefit and the benefit of their family. And if they want a villa, and I haven't got one, by the way, then absolutely fine. But you get into it what you get out of what you put into it. And there again, it's a bit of a stereotype that cab drivers work 3 days a week, and they're either on the Algarve, the Costa Brava, or they're on the golf course. It takes hours and hours. Excuse me, turn that off. You have to work extremely hard these days especially under the current climate, because people are very aware of their finances, and when I first started in 1987, it was just around the Big Bang, and it was very, very busy. The investment bankers, but that's all changed after a couple of recessions. It's changed, and we have to put hard yards in and the hours, as I'm sure anyone else who
I think there's a misconception of what privilege is. I find that privilege isn't someone earning money. If you put in the hours, then you deserve it. And that's how life. Well, that's how I was brought up. You put in the hours, you work hard, and then you have the right to play hard, kind of ish. And when I was a child, I had to do the paper round, kind of ish, before I went to school, and that was my pocket. I had extra pocket money then, and that's a culture I grew up in. But I think people misconceive that with. I think what privilege is if mum and dad buy your house, if there's a trust fund, or you through mummy and daddy's connection, you go to a fancy school or get a job. But I don't think licensed taxi drivers have access to trust funds for mum and dad, do they? No, I don't think so.
None that I know, Peru, and many of them, but it's not. I know it may be seen as a privilege. Honestly, isn't. It's anyone at all who has a license and the will to complete a very, very arduous knowledge can do it. Anyone who's got a green badge has not been fast tracked. They didn't wake up one morning and there's a nice shiny cab on the drive. There you go, Angie, badge, off you go. We all do the same knowledge, and we have to earn that badge. It's not given to us. Certainly not a privilege. If you've been out on an icy, freezing cold day on a little Honda 90 and it's pouring with rain, puncture, that's not a privilege. It really is not.
No.
But it's all part of it. And as I say, we are a really, really broad church.